tới quán cà phê này, cà phê Tranh ở quận 3 ở thành phố Hồ Chí Minh nè. Hôm nay mình đi gặp một nhóm người Ấn Độ. Nhóm người này á, họ là một tổ chức không phi lợi nhuận. Họ là những nhà đầu tư EB-5 luôn, và họ đấu tranh cho những nhà đầu tư EB-5 khác. Những chuyện giống như là chủ đầu tư không trả tiền lại, những chuyện như là chính phủ Mỹ làm giấy tờ quá chậm, thì họ rất có một mối quan hệ với chính phủ, với lobbyist và đổi luật luôn. Họ đã làm được nhiều thứ lắm mà mình muốn hiểu. Đang muốn hiểu thêm về cái tập đoàn của họ, có khi nào mà họ giúp được những nhà đầu tư EB-5 Việt Nam hay không, mà họ đến với Việt Nam mà cũng là lý do đó. Thì hôm nay mình gặp họ nha, vô bữa quán cà phê với uống cà phê rồi gặp họ nói chuyện luôn. Vô. Trước tiên đang muốn cảm ơn Nga đang có hỏi Nga về là có hội đoàn nào mà giúp đỡ những nhà đầu tư EB-5 đấu tranh. Nếu mà làm hồ sơ lâu quá thì Nga có giới thiệu cho Dan cái tập đoàn là hai anh này Liên minh Aiia. Thì hôm nay mình sẽ Aiia.
Yes.
Ok. Liên minh hôm nay mình sẽ hỏi thêm về hai anh này ha. Để vừa là người chủ của cái người liên minh
các nhà đầu tư,
là người là leader của trong cái liên minh này. Ok, chủ tịch.
So Aishan is the president, right? And Sean is
co-founder.
And Easy is a program manager.
Program manager. Okay. So Aishan, can you tell us or more about your AII Alliance, what it stands for and what you guys do?
Sure. So,
yes, let's record everything.
Okay, great. So, the American Immigrant Investor Alliance is a non-profit that Sean, myself, and a few others started to really represent the voices of immigrant investors who are using the EB-5 program to immigrate to the United States. Both Sean and I are EB-5 investors. I'm from India, Sean's from Canada. We both did EB-5 for different reasons. I did it for my professional career so that I could get access to the resources that the United States offers. Sean wanted to bring his family from Canada to the US to give his kids access to a better quality of education and more opportunities as well. The fact remains that this EB-5 program is very popular. It's used by individuals from all over the world. But this immigration by investment program, while it requires a huge amount of investment, it also takes a long time for the benefits to arrive. The issue that a lot of the recent immigrant investors have faced, especially over the last 5-6 years, has been the issue they face have been a lot. I mean, whether it's been slow processing times, dealing with fraudulent investments, etc. And we, as individuals who are going through the program, wanted to create a body that could really advocate for and on behalf of EB-5 investors. So we started this organization in April of 2021 when the regional center, the program that we used to immigrate, the regional center program, lapsed, and which caused about 80,000 people to all lose their immigration benefits, in the sense that So in April 2021, the four five of us got together and started AIA. We wanted to start it because we knew that there was an issue that was going to impact a lot of the investors that were already in line. What was basically going to happen was that the program was going to lapse. Congress was trying to make changes to change the future of the program. They were trying to increase the investment amount from $500,000 to a higher amount. They wanted to change some of the rules and requirements on it, and members of the EB-5 industry were pushing back, and this caused the program to lapse, affecting everyone who had already invested, So we as a non-profit body wanted to advocate for these investors to make sure that everyone who's already invested, everyone who's already started the process, could at the very least finish their process and get their green card, not be stalled because of infighting between, different governing bodies. So yeah, that's how we got started, and now we are looking to continue our work. We're looking to continue advocating for investors so that they have a smooth immigration process. We want to advocate and educate investors who are new to the process, who maybe now want to start doing EB-5. And we also want to help those investors who may be in distressed position, many who may be facing long waiting times and don't have any news from the American government on what's going on with their petition. And similarly from investors who may have not got their money back when they are owed that back. And we just want to give them the tools and resources that they need to have a positive experience. And I think that's really kind of important what we're doing, because we're all trying to become Americans. I think one of the greatest things about the United States is democracy. And as a democracy, it's important to have our voices heard. Because if these immigrant investors' voices aren't heard, then the noise will all be dominated by different interest groups who have different interests than us. So yeah, I think that's our story.
Yeah. Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So you founded for 2 years now. What's your inspiration? What's your passion upon it? You just wanna there's a corrupt system, or you see there's something going on to the system that you want to change?
Yeah, so I guess I'll pick up off of what Ishan was saying. In the U.S., democracy isn't just a word. It's not something you see every 2 years and in an election. Democracy happens every day. And what that means in practice is that different groups, generally with an aligned interest, they organize themselves and advocate for themselves. This is very common. So, for example, lawyers have their own associations. Engineers and architects have their own association. Accountants have their own association. So it's not an uncommon practice for people of like-minded interests to come together. So when we found this, obviously I made my investment in 2019. I did not know so much about the industry back then, but I was a curious one. There was a urgency to file my application because time is always of the essence. But then after I filed, I continued to take an interest in the workings of this industry. How does this industry operate behind the scenes? So my continued interest led me to attend a conference that was organized in Los Angeles. I met Ishan over there the first time, and we stayed in touch online. Then when this 2021 issue occurred, when the program was about to lapse, a few of us investors saw the writing on the wall that this program, without intervention, is going to expire. There was a lot of members of the industry who were complacent about it, who never thought that the U.S. government would let a program like this expire because they were used to U.S. government continually extending the program. This time, however, was different. The U.S. government, and specifically certain offices in the Congress, they wanted change because they wanted to reform the program. They wanted to improve the image of the program, which in their mind had over time somewhat corrupted. So, we saw that as an opportunity to sort of launch ourselves and make sure that at the very least, the investor interests were protected. And our interests were very simple. For those people that had already invested, all we were asking for was that people with an existing application be allowed to go through the process and complete the process under the rules that were in place when they made that investment. One thing that's really important for investors the world over is certainty of investment rules, right? So when you change rules of the investment in the middle of an investment, it never sends a good message to the investor community. So we impressed upon different offices in the United States government to ensure that the image that U.S. has of being a free and fair...
Oh, wait, let me ask you this. So basically, you're saying that there's a program, EB-5 program, and when they change the law, they don't honor all of the law that... So this doesn't seem like the U.S. system to me, right? Is it...
So let me explain a little bit for Dan and for everyone that actually know so many things about it. Should I speak in English or
tiếng Việt.
Thì có lẽ mọi người nghe sẽ thấy hơi phức tạp một chút, nhưng mà chương trình EB-5 là như thế này. Nó là một chương trình pilot program trước 15 tháng 3 2022 rồi. Đó là một chương trình pilot program và nó sẽ được re-authorize gia hạn. Nó sẽ được re-authorize gia hạn. Và thông thường nó sẽ được re-authorize gia hạn vào cái budget bill. Cái budget bill là cái bill về ngân sách hàng năm. Thì cái thời gian gia hạn thông thường nó sẽ gắn liền với cái budget bill, có thể là vào tháng 9 hàng năm. Đúng không ạ? Kết thúc năm tài khóa là cuối tháng 9 đầu tháng 10. Thế thì chương trình EB-5 thông thường nó sẽ được gia hạn annual như vậy. Gia hạn annual như vậy. Chương trình EB-5 mà regional center đó. Thế thì tới cái năm 2021 nó có một cái sự việc xảy ra là như này. Do là chương trình nó có những cái sự tranh chấp nội bộ trong cái industry, thì chương trình nó gọi là lapse, nó gọi là đóng băng, có nghĩa là chương trình tạm ngưng, không có được gia hạn. Thì theo cái luật của bên chương trình và theo cái luật của bên dịch, tức là các bên họ interpret về cái luật đấy ra, thì khi mà chương trình lapse, chương trình bị freeze, đóng băng như vậy, thì những cái hồ sơ nộp vô là sẽ không có process tiền. Yes, mình nghe mình có thể thấy là nó hơi bị khó hiểu.
Because myself, that doesn't seem like the legal system in the U.S.
It's not very fair, is it?
It's not fair because usually everything is grandfathered in. I
But
mean,
this is
if you something you turn it in before the expiration date, right?
But you know what? Like one thing that we want to make clear is
Yeah.
when there's most of the things you notice that happen in the business world or your day-to-day life in the U.S. is within the context of existing laws already established. But when it comes to a law that was specifically, I'm sure as you were describing, a temporary law, and then when the lawmakers in Congress are forced to rewrite it, at this point, all of the inputs matter because everybody's going to go in there and make sure that they are able to influence the process. So we weren't just dealing with the simple matter of the law that's there and it's just a matter of enforcing the law. It's the law itself that expired.
Right.
And that becomes a completely different ball game that most people are not used to.
You're dealing with some politics going on in there, right?
Yeah.
So basically,
Yeah, so this was purely a political process for the
Right.
most part,
Right.
less of a legal process.
And look, I will say it is very hard for someone living abroad to actually understand this.
right.
Like when this was happening, investors from all over the world couldn't understand why the US government would do this. Why would they renege on a contract that they've entered into? But it's complicated because, you know, this program, this EB-5 program, especially the program that we all invested in, the regional center program, was designed to be temporary. It's not, even now, it's not a final program. It was created and it already received these temporary authorizations to continue. And it's always been controversial because, you know, people see it as a cash for visa scheme. The criticism that's faced is that, oh, this is just rich people buying their way into America when there's other people deserving to get in. Now, sure, I'm not saying that there aren't, you know, rich, ultra wealthy people just looking to relocate to the US. That is there, but you know, I will say as someone who's worked in EB-5 for the last 5 years, majority of the people looking to invest are hardworking folks who are just trying to give better opportunities and a better life to their family, their children, etc. You know, even for me, it's not like my parents did EB-5. They're happy in their home country. My father's successful and, you know, he's built a life for himself. But he did it for me because he knew the value it would provide for me. And that's the hope for every EB-5 investor out there. And so to have this happen was a bit of a slap on the face, and that's to most investors all over. And so the work we did and the work we were successful on was that if the rules change now in the future, the existing investors would not be impacted by them. So now, what we did was we basically lobbied for this. We went to different members of Congress. We went to DC. We actually sat down with senators and Congress people, and we actually told them that, look, this is the situation where all immigrant investors who have invested in your communities, we've helped build jobs in your states, in your districts, and all we're asking for is for you to come through for us and make sure we get our green cards. The future of the program, what happens next, look, that's your business. We know that's important to you. but please at least, uphold the end of your contract that we've entered into. And so that was our mission. That is what we led with, and that's why we were successful.
So it seemed like you're the first. You found the first thing to actually fight for the EB-5 investor rights.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're the first for investor to buy investor organization. So the grandfathering provisions we got passed eventually not only help people who filed before the lapse, but they also provide certainty to people who filed after the lapse. So for example, if you're filing in this year, because this program is still not permanent, it expires in 2027, our grandfathering language specifically states that people who filed at any point before 2027, 2026 as a matter of fact, will still be able to continue the process even after the program lapses. So we've made sure that investors in the future will never face this problem.
Right. So Ngak and goes into English so they can hear it also. Let me try to rephrase everything that I said. So basically, the American legal system always need a check and balance. And basically, usually, if the law usually honor whatever they said, even if the laws expire or lapse, they usually honor the whatever they told you the investors rating, whatever they written down, they have to honor that. But because there's nobody actually telling them, hey, you're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
You're like the only. I mean, right now the only organization that actually advocate for all this stuff, fighting for the rights, or EB-5 investor rights.
So there are other EB-5 organizations, but most of them have some sort of interest behind them. We're the only buy investor for investor organization.
And we're solely focused on investors, whereas other groups tend to have influence from the industry and so forth. Yeah, so we want to be the ones that are representing investors. We don't have a stake in the money behind it, like we're a registered nonprofit. We're doing this solely to make sure that everyone's having an ethical EB-5 journey, both on the investment side and the immigration
side.
So.
What you guys is incredible. I mean, it's great. Because what we do is, I didn't know anything about EB-5 investors like a year ago. I mean, I met Nia and I learned so much, right?
Same here.
What we want to know is, are you guys expanding out something you fight for investors, like people, investors that can't get their money back from the regional center or the GP or the paperwork? Are you expanding your purpose?
So, I mean, there's a couple of things we want to do.
All right.
So the first and most important is for existing investors, we want to make sure they at least have the knowledge and resources that everyone does. So one of the things that I noticed working in the EB-5 industry for the last 5 years was that English-speaking investors tend to have access to a lot more knowledge than, folks that don't.
Right.
Take for example, investors who've had delayed petitions. So people who've invested in, say, 2017, 2018, 2019. So it's now like by the end of 2022 now. I can tell you that everyone that I worked with in 2017, 18, 19, most of them all have their green cards. I was able to use my knowledge of the industry and the inner workings of the legal system to help get their applications approved. At the same time, I see investors from those same years, from Vietnam, from other non-English speaking communities that still are waiting, and that's really unfair.
Right.
I would hope that all those investors should be aware of the same things that we are.
Right.
Even my own application, for example, I applied for what's called an I-829, an application, the last stage of the application in 2020 of the EB-5 process. And this last application takes about 3 to 4 years to get approved. I got my approval within 1 year. It's not because my application or my petition was better than someone else's. It's just that I knew what it could take to get that petition approved faster. Similarly, that same method was used by Sean for his petition.
You know how to complain.
Huh?
You know how to complain.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to complain. If you really want to get into detail, what I'm specifically hinting at is the idea of actually suing the government.
Right.
I sued USCIS. You can actually look up my case. look up my name versus Khanna versus USCIS, and you can see this court record which shows how I opened a litigation case against USCIS, and my attorney basically argued that my petition has been waiting too long, and I was successful in getting my petition approved quicker than most others. Now, the idea of something like suing the government, it's a very foreign concept to someone, say, living in India, China, Vietnam, South Africa, right? I mean, when you hear that phrase, I mean, you get scared. You wonder, like, wait, what if something bad happens to my petition because of it? But see, that's the thing. You know, we're all trying to become Americans here. As you probably know, America is also the most #1 litigious country in the world.
Yes.
If something happens, you sue. Someone goes against a contract, you sue him. And that's what I did, and that's what Sean has done as well. But to investors who aren't familiar with this concept, this is scary, and this is what our mission is to. This is just one of the examples. We want to help bring that same knowledge and tools and resources, and that reassurance that look, it's not just you who are facing this issue; it's everyone else as well. And we have found solutions to these problems. Our goal is to share that knowledge with people all over the world, regardless of what language they speak or where they're from. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And so that's one aspect of it, which is the education, if you want to educate investors. That also includes resources and knowledge on how to get your money back, how to sue your regional center, how to get organized with other investors, understanding how the American justice system works. Because that is critical as you go about making this gigantic investment. You are putting your life savings on the line. I believe every single investor, no matter where they're from, should know what they need to do to protect that investment, come what may. So that's one side of it. The other two big priorities for us is our advocacy work. One is to help the processing times, to hold USCIS accountable, things like that. Those are things that we actually want to advocate for from the government. So like one of the things we did was we hired a lobbyist. So we actually hired a former congressman, someone who actually wrote the original EB-5 bill back in 1990. He is the one who is advocating for us on the Hill to really help our voices be heard. And our hope is that we can hold USCIS accountable, we can get transparency from the government agencies so people know what to expect. People know, hey, how long is it going to take for me to actually move to America? Because many investors are told, oh yeah, you'll move to America in 2-3 years. And I know there are people out right now that are waiting 5-6 years. And it's very unfair for them. No one wants to invest in nearly $1 million and have to wait that long. That doesn't make America very attractive now, does it? So I think prioritizing those issues, advocating for them is I think some of our biggest goals. So, and like I said, we're a non-profit, Sean and I were board members, we don't pay ourselves. Our hope is that really we can get up to a point where investors and various EB-5 stakeholders continue to donate to us, and we use that money to really fund our advocacy efforts and continue to make the process better for everyone. And I think it's a win-win for everyone if we can help better the experience for our existing investors. I'm sure more new people will want to invest. More new immigrants will say, yes, I want to invest in America so I can get my green card, invest in communities and in projects that will help create jobs and better impact the American economy. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One problem that most EB-5 investors we have here in Vietnam is there's paperwork issues that they couldn't get them. Now the U.S. government don't talk to them anymore, or they just bluntly deny their application. But the problem is now the money is in limbo somewhere with the project. Yeah. So is that something you guys want to branch out, or something you want to help me?
Yeah. So that's an excellent point. So one of the things that we've been working on has been filing what's called a FOIA request. It's a Freedom of Information Act request. We are requesting data and information from the US government on some of these things. We've asked for a whole bunch of things. We've asked for like internal emails between staffers. We're asking for a breakdown of pending petitions. We're asking for stuff that's not generally available to the public. Now, one of the things that we know that is impacting Vietnamese investors, like you said, has been, paperwork issues, maybe like currency transfer stuff, things that Vietnamese investors need to do to actually make their investment, and that is not being accepted by USCIS. One of the things we've also noticed that it's very arbitrary. It seems like some people are getting approved using the same methods, but some people are not. It's very random. So what we've now done is we're aggressively going after USCIS to explain why this is the case. We're asking them for internal company memos. We're asking them for communications between the different adjudicators. We are trying to get to exactly the bottom of what they're doing, what their internal policies are, why they're denying some cases and they're approving some. Using this data, we hope to provide this information to the different lawyers, to folks such as Nas, so she can better help serve her clients. So if one of her investors comes back and says, I just got a denial or I just got a request for evidence and I don't know why I got it, I can't get this information, I don't know why they're asking me for this, we can help provide some data that could help back up a lot of the questions that USCIS may ask. And our hope is that, because what we've seen is unfair, what's happening to the investors is very unfair. So using the information we've gathered from internally in USCIS, we hope that it could help provide support to those investors. But I think the important thing to highlight though is that this is just one of the issues that I think investors face. I think there's similar issues like this faced by other investors all over the world. So the more we know about this, I think the more willing we are to go after these things. This particular issue you're talking about was actually brought to our attention by our investors, by our donors in Vietnam, and I'm hoping that we can expand to other things, attack the other issues similarly, just like this, as we learn about them.
And our purpose on this trip was just information gathering, right? We took a particular interest in Vietnam because we had heard from our donor audience that there were particular issues. We didn't realize the scale of the problem until we came. And then talking to people like yourselves, we understood that there is quite a bit of.
That's quite a bit of.
It's a big problem, and there's a lot of common themes here that in some ways can be addressed because they're not all random issues. There's some particular issues that we could prioritize and go through and start to address one by one.
So basically, you can help in a bigger scale, in a bigger picture, broad picture, fighting with the U.S. government. But in an individual like that, you can guide them to lawyers, to resources that they can take, right? Because right now, what happening is they don't know where to go to get all the resources. I mean, for me or for even me, for I'm like, man, this is take a long time for us, or we actually have to dedicate
I think one of the biggest issues is that investors aren't aware of how things work, right? You can talk a little bit about 3 branches of government and really what we're trying to do in every single branch and how that works.
Yeah, so the U.S. is faced with 3 branches of government, obviously the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So the legislative takes care of all the lawmaking that goes on in the U.S. That's writing the laws and then implementing them. So in that sphere, we engage in something that's called lobbying, which is where you hire someone who is a government insider to go in and work with legislators to write the law, to include things that we're very interested in into the law. So that happened with the Reform and Integrity Act that was passed in March. We had tried to add in different features that would benefit investors with redeployment. So that's asking for investors' consent when you're redeploying money. Some of these things didn't make it in, but we were able to